guys, this is Jerningam. We're going to be talking about, again,
is there really
no deal, as you can see here, no deal Brexit deals unless anti demonstrates backstop drop, says Boris Johnson.
an alternative to the backstop, the Irish border issue that's blocked any parliamentary agreement on a Brexit deal? Boris Johnson, in his letter to the EU Council President, appears to believe there is, although offers little detail. The Prime Minister says the backstop is anti-democratic and inconsistent with the sovereignty of the UK as a state, but adds the government would not put in place infrastructure, checks or controls at the border. We would be happy, he says, to accept a legally binding commitment to this effect and hope that the EU would do likewise.
I think the letter makes clear is that this really is now our best and last chance to get a deal, to get an agreement that can get through the House of Commons. And if we are unable, if the EU are unable to move on this issue, then we are going to leave on the 31st of October. That's what we've committed to.
That was this morning. By lunchtime, Donald Tusk had tweeted the Council's response to Mr Johnson's basis for negotiations in the run-up to October the 31st. Mr Tusk was rather dismissive. He said those against the backstop and not proposing...
Ah, the bloody TV's just gone off again. Sorry about that, guys. The TV keeps doing this. I'm going to have to really forward what I've missed. So,
realistic.
okay, so I'm going to go up to there.
In the run-up to October the 31st, Mr Tusk was rather dismissive. He said those...
I don't know why the TV just keeps switching off. It's very annoying.
Against the backstop and not
Sake!
realistic.
I really am going to get annoyed with this TV. I'm sorry for getting angry, guys, but the TV just keeps switching off.
Alternatives, in fact, support re-establishing a border, even if they do not admit it. Opening gambits or merely theatre? The Prime Minister responded to the response to his initial proposals.
At the moment, it is absolutely true that our friends and partners are a bit negative. I mean, we're getting, I saw what Donald Tusk had to say, and it wasn't redolent of a sense of optimism. But I think actually we'll get there.
It's very unclear what the Prime Minister thinks he's negotiating. He needs to recognise that by just holding the threat of a no-deal Brexit on the 31st of October towards the European Union isn't going to bring about a change. It's going to make things much worse.
The government this afternoon issued a statement announcing that ministers and civil servants will no longer be attending most EU meetings from September the 1st. Representation no longer needed, it said. The priority was to unshackle officials so that they can refocus on Brexit plans and on trade agreements with other countries. Some Brexit-opposing MPs said the Prime Minister is making demands he knows the EU will turn down, so he can blame them if we leave without a deal. Equally, Mr Johnson is blaming some MPs who are trying to block a no-deal for why the EU won't give concessions. He's meeting Angela Merkel in Berlin tomorrow to ask for just that. But with both her and Tusk insisting the withdrawal agreement cannot be reopened, there appears little prospect of a sudden change in direction.
Simon Israel reporting. Well, I'm joined now from Dublin by Senator Neil Richmond, who is chair of the Irish Senate's Brexit Committee. So can anybody, Senator, on your committee see any way forward which respects the need for the European Union to have a seal on its trading community, and yet at the same time not to have a border with Northern Ireland?
Well, this has been the great difficulty that has been discussed over the last 3 years, and indeed we flagged this long in advance of the referendum in the UK. It was extremely unfortunate that this situation and the UK's responsibilities to the border in Ireland, and indeed the Good Friday Agreement, were never discussed in the campaign, indeed weren't a factor. We have worked consistently on the European side with our British counterparts over the last 18 months, through 18 tortuous months of negotiations to produce what is a compromise agreement, a withdrawal agreement that takes into account the British government's own red lines, their commitments.
Oh, well, yeah.
and indeed produces a withdrawal agreement with the backstop and a future partnership declaration that we believe is absolutely the pathway towards a managed Brexit.
The difficulty is that in our own parliament, that went down. It didn't get through.
Indeed, I see that, and it's quite interesting that a lot of focus has been on the backstop. But the 60-year GMPs wrote just last week saying that they'd reject the withdrawal agreement regardless. We see the Labour Party, the SNP, the Liberal Democrats didn't reject the withdrawal agreement because of the backstop. And indeed, the Prime Minister, who now is using extremely unfortunate language such as anti-democratic, backed this agreement himself.
Is a border inevitable?
We certainly don't think so. We very much hope so. But every day that we get closer to a no deal, both the Irish and British governments lose full control over that border. And that's what's crucially important here. We both have responsibilities as the co-guarantors of the Good Friday Agreement, an international peace treaty lodged with the United Nations. If we give up control, the British government will have responsibilities to the WTO, any future partners, but equally, the Irish government will seek to protect the single market which we are remaining within. We can work this out. As you said, there's about 10 weeks to go, but ultimately, we want to move on to the next stage of negotiations, armed with the insurance policy of the backstop that we never actually want to see come into play.
One almost senses that the people, both north and south possibly, are kind of forgetting the utter carnage, horror that occurred around the border over all those years. Is that not informing any kind of part of the debate?
Oh, we have not forgotten. I grew up during the Troubles, John. Just last night, we saw a very worrying development when a bomb exploded in Fermanagh, right along the Irish border, thankfully no one hurt. Only a couple of months ago, we saw the sad murder of journalist Lyra McKee by dissident paramilitaries. There's been 9 dissident paramilitary activities this year compared to just 1 last year. We know that. We bear it in mind, and that's why we need the backstop. To ensure there is no hardening of border, that there isn't a risk to what is a very fragile peace process. We know that, we respect that, the European side has been consistent on it. However, it is the British government who equally has that responsibility and can't simply walk away from it and say they won't put up something when they will have responsibilities that might not make that possible.
And do you think that that is uppermost in the minds of the people that are involved, both sides on this, both in Europe and both in Britain? Do you believe that those issues that you marked out so coherently are uppermost in their minds?
Well, I can only speak for the European side, but I've met Michel Barnier, I've met President Juncker, President Tusk, and incoming Presidents von der Leyen and Michel, and they absolutely reaffirm their commitment to the Good Friday Agreement, as we've noticed a number of American congressmen and women have done too. But one thing that is clear is that Boris Johnson, as Foreign Secretary, never actually visited the border. Michel Barnier is upcoming for his 6th visit next month.
Well, goes to show, doesn't it?
CPIC's smash hit Independence Day offer is back. Buy 3 plots and get 1 free at our flagship development.
Now, the UK and EU leaders appear to have hardened their positions on reopening Brexit negotiations, throwing more doubt on any breakthrough before the October 31st deadline. European Council President Donald Tusk has rejected British Prime Minister Boris Johnson's latest demands to get rid of the so-called Irish backstop provisions in the current withdrawal agreement. It's an insurance policy to prevent border checks between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. Tusk says Johnson hasn't presented any viable alternative, so there's nothing to renegotiate. Lawrence Lee has more from Dundalk, near the Irish border.
This is the M1 motorway, the main arterial route connecting the Republic of Ireland behind the camera to Northern Ireland and the UK, away in the distance. And it is the absolute flashpoint in the standoff between the European Union and the UK in the crisis over Brexit. What both sides say that they absolutely want to guarantee is no hard border, because that would jeopardise the long-standing Northern Ireland peace process. And to that end, the idea had been to have this thing called the backstop, leaving the border open until some new arrangement can be found whereby the UK can leave the European Union totally, leave the customs union, technology probably, but to maintain the open border. Well, now Boris Johnson, the new British Prime Minister, who insists that the UK is leaving on the 31st of October, with or without a deal, has said the backstop has to go because he says it would lock the UK into the European Union in this orbit forever, and it's undemocratic. But in his letter to Donald Tusk at the Council of Europe, in which he says some alternative arrangement needs to be found. He can't say what that alternative arrangement is, and so consequently, his letter has been ruled out of court by both Donald Tusk and by Irish politicians here, who we've been speaking to as well. The reason why it matters isn't just because, if you can imagine, border controls there, big queues of traffic, big effects obviously on cross-border trade, both for the UK and for Ireland as well. But the other reason why it matters is because in Ireland in particular, the absolute fear is that a customs post there would be attacked by dissident Republicans, and they would go for not just British, but also Irish customs officials. And you'd see the re-emergence of the troubles which blighted Northern Ireland for so many years. The UK says it's a myth, it's scaremongering, there won't ever be a border, we'll make sure it doesn't happen. Something else just needs to be found. But the trouble is Boris Johnson can't say what that alternative solution is. And the closer we get to the end of October, the greater the fears are of the re-emergence of the hard border and all the security risks and risks to trade that go along with all that.
Mind you, it's not long until October anyway, so more news on about the police officer at PC Andrews was killed in the UK. I'll put that on. They're all his colleagues, the police officer's colleagues. They've lost one of their own friends in the force. What kind of world do we live in? Sometimes I ask myself that, guys, every day. But you know, we all think differently, and what is in the world, and many crazy things, and yep.
At the moment, it is absolutely true that our friends and partners are a bit negative. I mean, we're getting, I saw what Donald Tusk had to say, and it, it wasn't redolent of a sense of optimism. But I think actually we'll get there. I think there is a real sense now that something needs to be done with this backstop. We can't get it through Parliament as it is. One thing that slightly, I think, complicates the picture is that our EU friends still clearly think that there is a possibility that Parliament will block Brexit. And as long as they think there's a possibility that Parliament will block Brexit, they're unlikely to be minded to make the concessions that we need. So it's going to take a bit of patience.
There's only so much patience people can have over this Brexit thing until they get annoyed. And then start rioting. Then everything else happens. Ridiculous. But people don't seem to realise that in the world. They think, well, they try and live in our shoes for a change and understand what the real world's about. But I don't know. Stupid country sometimes.
We take note of Prime Minister Johnson's letter, which was addressed to President Tusk, and of which President Juncker was in copy. You will have also seen that President Tusk has just tweeted his initial reaction to this letter, a reaction that we share. From the Commission side, we welcome the UK government's engagement and continued commitment to an orderly withdrawal. We firmly believe that this is in the best interests of both the EU and the UK. However, we also note that the letter does not provide a legal operational solution to prevent the return of a hard border on the island of Ireland. It does not set out what any alternative arrangements could be, and in fact, it recognises that there is no guarantee that such arrangements will be in place by the end of the transitional period. Otherwise, and of course, and as we stated on many occasions, we do stand ready to work constructively with the UK and within our mandate. A follow-up.
And to the assertion that whether the UK leaves with no deal is largely now in the hands of the EU?
I don't think it's the time to enter into blame games. As we said, what we believe is that a orderly withdrawal is in the best interests of both the EU and the UK, and this is what we continue to push for. Our position on the backstop is well known. I mean, it's something that we've repeated many times in this press room. It's Brexit that creates unique difficulties for the island of Ireland. And both sides began these negotiations with a commitment to avoid a hard border on the island of Ireland. And the backstop is the only means identified so far by both parties to honour this commitment. And whilst both the EU and the UK have also already committed to finding alternative arrangements for the backstop, notably in the joint interpretive instrument, which we agreed in March 2019, we still believe that in the absence of a guarantee that such arrangements will be in place by the end of the transitional period, both the EU and the UK need a legally operational solution in the withdrawal agreement that will prevent that hard border and respect the Good Friday Agreement, and that's the sole purpose of the backstop. As regards next steps, we can expect that President Tusk will formally reply to this letter, and so far we've not received a request from the UK for a bilateral meeting from our side, but President Juncker, as ever, and as we've said before, remains available should the UK wish to hold talks, and we are ready to analyse any concrete proposals that are compatible with the withdrawal agreement.
I don't know what to think about that. It's like we're going to look like we're going to leave a deal or no deal. It's ridiculous. It's like they can't make their mind up in Parliament. If we stay in the European Union, we go out the European Union. It pisses me off, it does. I know I'm doing videos about this, guys, but it's just irritating. 3 years I've been dealing with this talking about the EU, and they still haven't got anywhere with it. That's the annoying thing, and a lot of people are frustrated like me, probably. I'm not the only person that's frustrated over this. Bloody ridiculous. Absolute bloody joke.
You cannot put a cost on moments like this. But while hospices provide priceless peace and space for families to spend with their loved ones, end-of-life care comes at a price most hospices increasingly cannot afford. But for this struggling sector, today came a rare moment of relief.
We're putting some more money in today, another 25 million to help hospices across the country. But it is just the beginning of what I think is a very, very important programme to try to support a vital part of the care package we offer people towards the end of their lives.
At St Luke's Hospice in North London, every penny counts. Here they're running.
Don't know why they call it a hospice. It's called hospital.
More than they're bringing in. And while they welcome the Prime Minister's announcement, planned cuts to services are still unavoidable.
We are currently in the process of formulating a plan to reduce our expenditure. That will mean cuts, and that will mean less care provided to people at the end of their lives.
And do you think today's announcement will change any of that?
No, because it is not a sustainable.
It would be nice to know what's going on in our country, but they always seem to keep us in the dark in Parliament. We don't hardly know half the time.
I think people at the end of their lives will experience.
We have a rough idea what goes on in our country, but they know more than they let on.
£3 million a day to provide end-of-life care. That adds up to £1.4 billion every year, with hospices raising £1 billion of that themselves. But in May, an ITV News investigation found that 1 in 3 are having to cut services because of a lack of funding, with 90% saying they don't have the resources to meet rising demand.
It is a most welcome first step, yes, but structurally we need to look at the funding for hospices. They're spending £1.4 billion a year, and £1 billion of that is coming from the public in terms of fundraising. Now, do we really want a society where good end-of-life care is dependent on how many raffle tickets you can sell and how many people are willing to run marathons for us?
Now, hospices hope the Prime Minister keeps his word so they can keep providing the care and comfort when we need it most. Daniel Hewitt, ITV News.
What is this world coming to? What is this world coming to, guys? What is it coming to? It's kind of annoying. Anyway, guys, I think I'll leave it in this stream. Hope you've all enjoyed it. Talks about Northern Ireland's backstop. That's been a problem since day one. But anyway, thank you for joining me. Please like, comment, subscribe, share these videos with your friends, and I'll catch you in the next stream. Peace. That was a bit fast, that was. Talking very quick again. Peace.